Greetings, fellow adventurers. I am the man in the hat, Adam Zern, and welcome. It's a real honor to be here today broadcasting to you. Now, some of you eagle eye observers may have noticed that I am not coming to you from the Willow Valley Cultural Center. Due to some scheduled maintenance, I am here broadcasting to you from Uncharted Lancaster World Headquarters, which may or may not be just an unfinished corner of my basement. Now, before we begin, I want to ask a simple question, so just raise the hand will suffice. How many of you have heard of Uncharted Lancaster before? Go ahead, put your hands up. I can see you through the camera. Even you, the guy picking his nose. You didn't think I could see you, but I did. So get those hands up and let me count. All right. Basically, no one's ever heard of Uncharted Lancaster before, and that's okay. So, what is Uncharted Lancaster? And that is a website that I run. You can find me online at www.unchartedlancaster.com, as well as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And Twitter, simply search Uncharted Lancaster. And there, I like to do two things. So, one, I like to highlight fascinating pieces of local history. And today we're going to be talking about Pequea, which is right on the Susquehanna River. So I've got three fun facts that I want to share with you about the mighty river. So, one, did you know that the Susquehanna is the oldest major river system in the United States? It dates somewhere between 250 and 500 million years old. Geologists believe it's even older than the Appalachian Mountains, which surround it. Just as a point of reference, the Nile River is only 30 million years old. And we think of that as being one of those cradle of civilization rivers. So Nile, 30 million, Susquehanna River, 250 to 500 million years old. All right, fun fact number two about the Susquehanna. So William Penn, Pennsylvania's founding father, had this plan to create a new Philadelphia right here, somewhere in Lancaster County, along the banks of the Susquehanna. He even set aside 3,000 acres where this new major city was going to go. And the port that was going to service this huge metropolitan city was going to be at Safe Harbor. So again, many of you have heard of Safe Harbor. If you've attended my previous presentations, you remember we talked about the petroglyphs there, and there is a major hydroelectric dam there today. Now, as you can see on this 1688 map, Philadelphia and this new Philadelphia, if you will, about the same latitude. And on paper, this is a solid plan for William Penn. We can see with Philadelphia, you've got the Delaware Bay leading up to the Delaware River, where Philadelphia is. To the west of it, we've got the Chesapeake and then the Susquehanna River. So on paper, they look basically identical. But what William Penn did not know is fun fact number three about the Susquehanna, and that it is the longest unnavigable river in the United States. So when John Smith was doing his big expedition in the early 1600s and made this famous map of Virginia from 1608, he was able to travel as far as what he dubbed Smith Falls, which is in the place today of modern-day Conowingo Dam. And there it was too rocky for even his smaller boats to go, and that's as far as he ended up there. So again, just kind of three fun facts about the Susquehanna. Now, opposite the local history of Uncharted Lancaster is the adventure side of the site. And there, as a kind of an incentive to go and visit some of the places that I've discussed, I've created a series of, kind of self-guided scavenger hunts that, conclude with some kind of treasure. Now, we're not talking, gold coins or anything. Typically 3D printed tokens, plastic gems and plastic gold coins and pins and buttons and things like that. But a lot of people seem to go out and enjoy that. I also do something that I call little side quests, and I'll talk about a place, and I'll leave, I have my own coin minting set, so I'll leave one of my coins there. I'll talk about it and the area and leave it there, kind of hide it in a spot, and the first person to go there can get one of these adventure tokens. Got extra life on one side there, so it's always good to have an extra life there in your inventory if you're a gamer like I am a little bit. Now, this past spring, I actually did run a real life treasure hunt, and I gave away $1,000 in $1 coins. I filled an ammo box with 18 pounds of these coins and hit it, and created a series of clues and riddles for people to figure out over a 6-week period. And at the end of that, gave out the $1,000. The winners also got this painting, as you can see here in the photo, by Lancaster County artist Scott Cantrell. And so they walked away with $1,000 in loot and a painting worth over $2,000. So a big prize there for those. And I'm hoping to do another treasure hunt here in 2022. All right, so that's just kind of who I am and what Uncharted Lancaster is. And so today we're going to be talking about the Pequea that almost was. And so while I was researching an article for the now defunct Pequea Trolley, I read a book entitled Seeing Lancaster County from a Trolley Window. The book, published in 1910, provided a first-hand account of riding the various trolley lines that radiated from Lancaster City to the 7 corners of the county. Now, you might be surprised to learn that at the height of service in 1913, 40 trolleys ran through Lancaster City alone, serving 12 million passengers annually. The Conestoga Traction Company, later called the Conestoga Transportation Company, which is a predecessor to the Red Rose Transit Authority that we have today, operated these trolleys throughout the county as early as 1899. Trolley service first began in the county in 1874, when the stagecoach line between Lancaster and Millersville was replaced with a horse-drawn streetcar. One of the line's primary purposes was to transport Millersville Normal School students, later which became Millersville University, to and from Lancaster City. In fact, special arrangements were made at the start and end of the fall and spring semesters to add a baggage car so students can transport their luggage. In the photo shown here, conductors wait for passengers at South George and West Frederick Streets in Millersville around 1918. One of the few trolley lines not owned by the Conestoga Traction Company was the Lancaster and York Furnace Street Railroad Company. And you can see a map here kind of highlighting the route between Millersville and Pequea. The Pequea Trolley, as it was locally known, was promoted by Frederick Schoaf as part of his efforts in the early 1900s to commercially develop Pequea as a summer resort. During the summer months, many people as far as Philadelphia would travel to Millersville to take the trolley to the Susquehanna River at the Pequea. Service was every hour, and it took an hour to cover the hilly 12.5 miles of track that passed through the countryside and wilderness. It operated between December 1903 until its closure on October 15th, 1930. The Pequea line started in what is now Millersville, and in warm months, students could ride in open cars taking them all the way to Pequea for boat races and swimming. Fares were only 5 cents in the 1920s, and by the time the trolley service ended in the 1930s, they were still only 15 cents. The trolley route headed south out of Millersville and then turned abruptly east to cross the Conestoga River. The piers from the bridge that carried the trolley are still visible today. In this photo I took just last month while kayaking down the Conestoga, you can see the pier there. The trolley meandered in a southward direction, eventually following Silver Mine Road, before crossing over the Pequea Creek at the edge of what is now Silver Mine Park. There's a sign at the trail marking the trolley's path, and the remains of stone abutments from the bridge that once stood there can still be seen. Once over the Pequea Creek, the trolley entered Mardick Township. As the trolley approached the Enola low-grade line, it began to follow the winding path of the Pequea Creek all the way to the Susquehanna River. Just before it reached the Martic Forge, the trolley passed 150 feet below the Martic Forge Trestle Bridge, as we can see here in this postcard. After passing through the Martic Forge, the trolley continued its path, hugging the banks of the Pequea Creek. The name of the creek is Shawnee for dust or ashes, and if you've ever walked along, it's often a very kind of muddy-looking creek. The tracks, especially in the early 1900s, were very different from the railroads in use today. The casual nature of the track work reportedly caused many attacks of seasickness for passengers as the cars swayed back and forth as they meandered down the tracks. And again, we can see that here in this Pequea of the trolley in the Pequea Gorge. The rugged, hilly landscape along the Pequea Gorge further enhanced this effect. In this postcard, you can see one of the many dams that used to litter the creeks here in Lancaster County. This one powered a sawmill. In this stretch, it is here that Suzy's hole can be found. The source of the name has long been a source of conjecture, but old-timers insist that the name comes from a woman who drowned here. Legend has it the rapids where the woman died is haunted by her ghost. Since then, at least 2 people have drowned there as well. Here's a fun fact that most people don't know. Suzy's hole is not the narrow rapids, but actually the tranquil swimming area just upstream. One of the Lancaster and York Furnace Street Railroad Company officials remarked that the line started nowhere and ended nowhere. Its entire route served no settlement larger than several houses clustered at crossroads. In this postcard, the trolley runs along the Pequea Creek just outside of Colemanville. After passing the rushing waters of Suzy's Hole, the creek slows as it approaches what is now the town of Colemanville. The remains of the forge, the rolling mill, and the dam are still visible today on the other side of the creek. It is here that the trail opens up and the Colemanville covered bridge becomes visible. At 170 feet, it is the second longest covered bridge in Lancaster County. From the Colemanville covered bridge, it's another 2 miles to the town of Pequea, where the forested road opens up with a view of the historic Susquehanna and its bleak shores and rocky bed. It was here in this summer resort town of Pequea that the trolley reached its final destination. There, visitors spent their time fishing, picnicking at the York Furnace Springs, which is just a tiny distance further south along the river. People would ride the miniature railroad between Pequea and York Furnace. People would study the eloquent rock formations and even explore Cold Cave. Today, the cave is known as Wind Cave. Interestingly enough, not much has changed in Pequea since the publishing of the 1910, seeing Lancaster County from a trolley window. People still fish and visit the cave. In fact, here I am at visiting Wind Cave with some family members in 2019. Speaking of Wind Cave, here are a couple fun facts. If you visit the cave, even on the hottest day in the summer, you'll probably need a coat. While Pennsylvania caves typically range in temperature between 50 and 57 degrees Fahrenheit, Wind Cave registers with refrigerator-like coldness at 38 degrees. In addition to the cave's chill, you will find a strong breeze at the cave's mouth. It is this phenomenon that gives Wind Cave its name. But what truly makes the location unique is its geology. Wind Cave is not a normal cave and nothing like Crystal Cave, Laurel Cave, or even Indian Echo caverns. For starters, these caves, like most in the United States, are solutional. That means they're formed when soluble rocks, such as limestone, are slowly dissolved or eroded by rainwater's natural acidity. Over time, as the water seeps through the ground, it enlarges the cracks into caves. Wind Cave, on the other hand, is a tectonic, also known as a fault cave. But in this case, tectonic does not mean caused by an earthquake. tectonic caves are usually created when massive rocks on the sides of ridges or mountains slip due to gravity's pull and then separate along vertical fractures. That's exactly how Wind Cave was formed thousands of years ago as the walls of the Susquehanna Gorge settled. This event formed fissures inside the mountain by splitting the walls of 3 or more systems of nearly vertical joints. Tectonic caves, though, are usually relatively unremarkable. Most barely go noticed, and even fewer are cataloged. Most are small in size, ranging from several feet to a few hundred feet in length. Some tectonic caves are not even caves, but instead deep chasms, which are open at the top. But Wind Cave is entirely underground, and in comparison to other tectonic caves, is huge, with almost 2,000 feet of underground passages and rooms. Sources everywhere agree that Wind Cave is the largest tectonic cave in the state and likely the eastern United States. However, after an exhaustive research, I was unable to find any mention of a larger tectonic cave anywhere in the United States. So on your next visit to Pequea, make a point to visit Wind Cave, especially if it's a hot one. It is unlike most other caves. This one is on public land and free to visit. All right, so back to the trolley. So the trip south from Millersville through the rolling hills of Mardickville and along the winding Pequea Creek was probably the most picturesque trolley ride in Lancaster County. The trip was rarely without adventure, though, as cows frequently blocked the track. Low voltage required patrons to get out and help push the cars up hills, and the swaying of the cars often caused motion sickness. Now, it was towards the end of this book that something grabbed my attention. There was a 2-page prospectus for the Pequehanna Inn. It boasted that a 384-room hotel would be the largest inn in the United States and possessed the most elegant dining room in the entire Commonwealth. However, what I found most fascinating was the location of this magnificent structure, a 5-minute walk from the Pequea railroad station. And you can see there, I've got the station marked on that map. So if I interpreted the advertisement correctly, this super luxurious hotel was going to be the crown jewel of an ambitious plan to transform Pequea into the Lake Placid of Pennsylvania. And I knew I wanted to know more. You know, I've driven through the village of Pequea enough times on my way to Wind Cave or from visiting the petroglyphs to know that there's no 384 hotel sitting on the hill there. You know, perhaps the Pequea suffered the same fate as the nearby Riverview Hotel, demolished by a controlled fire in the trough of an economic downturn during the 1970s. Here we can see a postcard of the Riverview Hotel. Wanting to know more, I performed the obligatory Google search and got 2 hits. When was the last time you did a Google search and got 2 hits? Both referenced the scene Lancaster County from a trolley window text. It looked as if the Pequehanna Inn might have been little more than a pipe dream that never left the drafting room table. But I wasn't quite ready to call it quits, though. I tried my luck with the Lancaster newspaper archives, and a more complicated story began to emerge. Planning for the Pequea Inn began as early as 1906, when prominent Lancaster city builder and contractor John F. Hartman formed the Universal Cooperative Association. According to the 1903 Annuals of Lancaster County, by the age of 30, Hartman was one of the most extensive contractors in Lancaster County. He had already built 145 houses and was in the process of constructing 96 more. Before Hartman turned 40, his firm had erected an additional 309 dwellings, including 60 on the 300 block of South Ann Street alone. The document praised Hartman for embodying in his work the latest ideas of building art and constructing houses that were unsurpassed for their convenience and architectural beauty. Hartman sought financing for the project by placing advertisements similar to the one in the scene Lancaster County from a trolley window up and down the East Coast. Now, here are some of the highlights from the prospectus. Located on a 100-acre farm in Conestoga Township, the magnificent structure will cover one of the largest areas of ground of any inn in the United States. All 384 rooms will be sunlit and fully ventilated with pure hilltop air. It will have the largest and finest dining room in the state. First floor, in addition to the administrative apartments, will have 50 lodging rooms. The second floor will have 108 rooms, with prices varying from $650 to $250. The third floor would have another 108 rooms at prices varying from $750 to $250. And the fourth floor, another 108 rooms at prices varying from $850 to $300. And again, this is in like 1910 money. Hartman's plan for the hotel was to be a cooperative venture similar to the condos today. Rooms would be sold on 100-year leases, and the owners would have the option to sublet their apartments. Depending on the location, rooms would cost between $250 and $850 with additional fees for service and maintenance. The building would have cost approximately $100,000 or roughly $2.6 million in today's money and would be the property of the association. Now, Hartman was able to gather a group of financial backers. Many of these men were very influential here in Lancaster County, especially in the southern end. For example, Paul Hine and Frederick Schoaf were instrumental in turning Pequea into a resort town. Schoaf operated a sawmill and a lumber yard in Pequea and organized the York Furnace Power Company. In fact, before the town was called Pequea, it was known as Schoaf's Post Office, as shown in this 1899 map. Schoaf built the Riverview Hotel in 1902-1903, and Hine purchased it from him the following year in 1904. In fact, at one time, practically all the riverfront on Lancaster County side of the Susquehanna was owned by Schoaf and Hine. Hine alone held 5 miles of river frontage to the south, including the York Furnace Spring area, where there was once a dance pavilion. These two men, together with John Myers, organized the trolley system in 1904 until it was replaced by a bus. Hine was also owned the water company which supplied the Pequea area. During Hine's ownership of the Riverview Hotel, the hotel saw visitors from as far away as Chicago and New York City. The Riverview also had its share of celebrities, which included President Calvin Coolidge and heavyweight boxing champ Jack Dempsey. There were tennis courts, croquet courts, swings with canopies, and other recreational facilities. The boat landing attracted craft from near and far. Hine also owned the Brunswick Hotel in Lancaster City. Needless to say, Hartman had some influential backers for his Pequehanna Inn project. A brief article from the August 19th, 1911 edition of the Enquirer reports that construction on the Pequehanna was underway. Now, historian Larry Hess, in his book of Mardock Township from 1980, indicated that construction may have started as early as 1907. Another article from the September 1949 in the Intelligencer Journal further detailed the project's progress, stating that the stone foundations were complete and some of the ironwork installed. Concrete block and bricks making machinery had also arrived at the job site. However, misfortune struck around 1910 when an ice jam wiped out a bridge over the Pequea on the route Hartman used to transport building supplies. Making matters worse was the 2-year delay in replacing the bridge, as a dispute between the county and the power company raged over whose responsibility it was to pay for it. During the interim, Hartman attempted to move hardware across the creek via barge, but was not permitted to do so. Hartman's bad luck continued once the bridge was complete. County officials prohibited him from using it, citing concerns that his building materials were too heavy. While there's no proof, I can't help but get the feeling that Hartman or the Pequea Inn was less than popular with at least one influential person giving the roadblocks that he faced over the years. Finally, the project fully collapsed when principal financial backer George Atlee committed suicide on September 3rd, 1911. Atlee was a senior member of the Philadelphia-based banking and brokerage firm. He was also a prominent figure in Lancaster County, owning the Lancaster and York Furnace Railroad Company, the Lancaster and Southern Railroad, a short trolley line connecting Rollinsville with the York Furnace line at Mardick Forge, the Colemanville Power Plant, and the Pequea Land Association, as well as several boats that ran on the Susquehanna. In an attempt to recoup some funds, Hartman sued Lancaster County in January of 1912 over their denial to use the new bridge. He sought $10,000 in damages. Without financial support, Hartman saw his network implode, as he had put most of the money up front himself to start the project. With the project permanently halted, Hartman sold most of the iron and lumber on the job site in an attempt to recoup some of his expenses. Despite all of this, Hartman never gave up his dream. He lived on the Future Hotel's property in a one-story cottage as late as 1949. He busied himself mowing the grass and cultivating flower gardens for guests who would never come. Hartman died in 1957 and is buried in Lakeland, Florida. Had the Pequehanna Inn been built, it would have been the climax of Hartman's impressive building career. Imagine a magnificent 384-room, 5-story turreted hotel sitting on a towering crest high above the mouth of the Pequea Creek, with sweeping views of the Susquehanna to the south. Here is a 3D rendering of what the Pequehanna Inn would have looked like using historical descriptions and drawings that I created in Google SketchUp. The hotel would have included a 100-acre tract of land located on the Conestoga Township side of the Pequea Creek called Hartman Hill. The grounds would have included tennis courts, croquet courts, parks, pavilions, lookouts, and sunken gardens. First floor plans for the Pequehanna called for administrative offices and 50 rooms for short-term visitors. The next 3 floors had 108 rooms for permanent guests. All rooms were sunlit and ventilated. A rooftop garden would occupy part of the 5th floor, along with a balcony, which would have extended on 3 sides. The view of the river would have been amazing. The Pequehanna was designed to have 3 main wings forming the 3 sides of a square. Each arm would have been 40 feet wide and 212 feet long. In the center, there would have been a beautiful interior courtyard and garden. Double verandas would have extended around the 3 sides of the proposed hotel, which was designed with an imposing facade and numerous windows. Constructed entirely of concrete, block, and brick, the hotel's goal was to be as fireproof as possible. The building's frontage would have had special landscape features. The dining room would have been a separate building and formed the 4th side of the square. It was designed to be 40 by 180 feet with glass domes at either end. Inside the dining room, there was a hanging basket-like mezzanine in the center where the orchestra would play. According to the Intelligential Journal in 1949, the Pequehanna's massive stone foundations still existed. Rock retaining walls, which created a series of terraces, were also visible. In the photo above from 1949, 75-year-old Hartman is seen standing next to the foundation of his unfinished dream. This topographic map shows the Pequehanna Inn, where it sat on the aptly named Hartman Hill. At this point in my research, I was left with one last question. More than 100 years later, does anything remain of the Pequehanna Inn's stone foundations and rock terraces? I reached out to Lancaster Conservancy as they owned about 12 of the original 100-acre tract. However, I was doubtful the foundations were inside their Pequea Nature Preserve. Topographical maps showed a significant elevation change, making it a poor location for a large hotel. But I thought I would ask anyway. A representative from the Conservancy confirmed my suspicions. No foundations were inside the preserve. However, she thought if any did remain, they would be on private land at the end of a private road. Using the Onyx Hunt app, I identified the various property owners on Hartman Hill. The trick became contacting any of them. I suddenly realized why you should keep the free phone book they give you every year. Online white pages are deceptively not free. I did some Facebook sleuthing and finally connected with the owner, who was kind enough to give me a tour of the grounds. The westernmost segment of the Pequehanna Inn shown here includes this 40 by 212-foot foundation. Unfortunately, this photograph doesn't do the experience any justice. The most identifiable architectural element was the curved foundation in the northwest corner. These stones would have supported the hotel's front left turret. The property owner said there used to be more stones, but in the intervening decades, materials have slowly disappeared for use in nearby residential projects. The northern wing of the Pequehanna was also partially visible. While I didn't see any of its stone foundations, excavation work was evident, marking the segment's boundaries. Today, in 2021, that's all that remains of Hartman's ambitious dream. Here are some 3D renderings of the Pequehanna Inn as it would have appeared today on Hartman Hill, viewed from the marina in Pequea. I like to think that in some alternate universe, the Pequehanna Inn actually sits high there on the hill, offering tourists impressive views of the Susquehanna as Pennsylvania's crown jewel answer to Lake Placid. Again, I would like to thank you for your attention today, and I'd like to leave you with these parting words of advice: is go and explore your backyard. We have so much rich and amazing history right here in Lancaster County that's just waiting to be viewed and even discovered. So I encourage you all to get out there and experience all that Lancaster County has to offer. Again, my name is Adam Zern, the man in the hat from Uncharted Lancaster. If you would like to learn more local history, please visit my website at www.unchartedlancaster.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Simply search Uncharted Lancaster. Have a great rest of your morning and afternoon, and I hope to talk to you guys again later this year. Goodbye.